the MT125, and this is my MT07. So how do I afford two motorcycles as a full-time student? This video is sponsored by my dad. Okay, just kidding. I don't have rich parents funding my hobby, and I also didn't win the lottery. So how did I go from earning $3.50 an hour at the supermarket to buying my dream bike and still owning my first bike? And no, I also didn't finance anything, by the way. Both bikes are fully paid off, and that's always going to be the case even in the future. If I can't afford it, I won't buy it. But there is one decision that made this all possible, and I'll tell you that at the end of the video. Let's start with my first bike, the MT125, and after that we'll go to the MT07. I got the MT125 when I was 18 years old, but we're gonna go a little bit further back in time to when I was 15, which is when I started working. I didn't really have any specific goal in mind, but I wanted to start investing. Yes, the finance gurus did exist back in 2018. Unfortunately, none of them told me to invest in Bitcoin. And you know what? Let's do some maintenance in the meantime. I need to fix my chain up, and I have to clean the bike afterward. Anyways, at that age you barely had any choice of what you wanted to do for work. It's either gonna be the supermarket or delivering newspapers, and I wasn't about that 5 a.m. life, let me tell you that. So I decided to go for the supermarket. The trick was working on Sundays, since you got paid double the money. And during my first summer I worked 4 days a week or something, which to me felt like a lot. I was getting paid $3.50 an hour, so that was barely anything, but it was pretty enjoyable in the beginning. After a while it did turn out that sorting groceries gets very boring very quick. It was a little bit of a lonely job too, since you just had one aisle you'd work in, and you're left alone with your thoughts for like 3 to 5 hours, which does drive you a little crazy. After working that summer, I told my manager I wanted to dial back to Sunday and Monday. I couldn't work much more than that because I was doing pretty bad at school, so I needed to lock in. I worked that supermarket job for over 2.5 years, and I bought a gaming laptop worth €1,000 and an iPhone XR which was worth €800, which I still own today. And those were pretty much my only big spendings. I'm kind of a cheapskate, so I don't really buy a lot of clothes or go out a lot. I also couldn't invest anything because I needed to be 18 to open up an account, and my parents didn't want to do that for me. Once I graduated at 18 years old, I started investing some of my money and went on a vacation with the boys. When I got back, I got a job as a barista, which ended up to be quite a good move, even though I was still getting paid minimum wage. And that's because there was a decent demand for baristas. So I joined a freelancing company called Temper, and whenever I had free time I'd go and work at some random office or hotel. This was all while being in university, and a normal week for me was about 20 hours of work on top of my studies. And whenever I had free time I went freelancing, but it was on and off because you needed to have the whole day off to really be able and freelance. It did pay out the most by far. I got like €20 an hour instead of the regular €10 an hour. And if you're living in the Netherlands, I've got a link in the description to get you started. I think they also pay you like €20 extra if you use that link, so I'd say go for it. Now this is when I started having a little bit too much money for my liking, but that sounds weird. However, for me, if my money is sitting in my bank account, I'd preferably spend that money, and preferably also on investments. So how did I get into motorcycles? Now this is going to be a little bit of a silly reason, but one day I got into a small fight with my mother, and it was a stupid argument. She was picking me up while I was watching a football game with my friend. I wanted to watch the next Champions League game too, but she was already there to pick me up. And that's when I realized I want my own mode of transportation, so I can be a little bit more independent. I also realized getting a motorcycle was going to be a lot more expensive than I thought, so I started budgeting. Alright, that's pretty much it for the chain maintenance. I still try to track every single expense manually in an Excel sheet, so whenever I spend too much on eating out or random things, I can immediately see it. I used to be really strict about this, but I've realized that going out with friends and making memories is just as important as saving money. Maybe even more important. That being said, there are things I'd never spend my money on. I've never been to a festival, never been to the club, almost never went to the bar. I also don't spend on overpriced clothing, except motorcycle clothing. It's a little cold. Yeah, that's a lot better. Out of everything I earned, I used to like spend 30%, and the remaining 70% was either saved or invested. At 18.5, I took the money I made and combined it with my investment results, and I invested in the MT125. The bike itself was about €3,500. Getting my license cost €1,700, and gear was €500. That completely drained my bank account, so I was back to square one, which I kind of liked. I don't know why. Anyways, owning a motorcycle helped me accept some freelance jobs that were even further away, so that was pretty nice. Everything to justify the purchase. Eventually I ended up picking up a second job at a real estate company. This aligned more with my studies and I started saving again. I knew I wanted to upgrade to an A2 bike when I turned 21, so I had 2.5 years to prepare. I did the math, figured out that if I set aside €200 each month, I'd have nearly €5,000 saved. Combine that with the €3,000 resale value of the MT125 and I'd have the budget for my next bike. Originally I wanted a MT-07, then I went to the Tracer 700, then I wanted an XSR 700. Basically a Yamaha fanboy, I know, but still, my dream bike switched a few times before I ended up back at the MT-07. And here it is, the MT-07 2025, the 4th generation with just 800 kilometers on the dash after 2 months. I've been a little busy with university, so I couldn't ride that much. This is my first brand new motorcycle ever, and man, I have been enjoying every single second on this bike. I haven't ridden it once without smiling from ear to ear. And the day I picked it up from the dealership, honestly, it didn't really feel real at all. I felt like all the efforts over the past few years paid off, and even then I never expected this. The MT-07 is really similar to the MT-125, but this is where motorcycling starts getting a little bit more serious. The power, the weight, the technology, I mean, look at the dash, it's all on a different level. It's a very versatile bike too. It is great for city riding, it has enough torque for the back roads, and it's got comfortable ergonomics for longer trips, which is why I didn't get the R7. I'm planning on doing a road trip with my friends and we're gonna ride through Germany, Belgium and France, so I wanted a little bit of comfort. Plus, with the upgraded brakes and suspension, I can also do track days if I want to, so it's pretty much the perfect daily bike. Now let's fire it up. Now let's talk about what it actually costs to own these bikes. The insurance for my MT125 was €30 a month, and for my MT-07 it's €60 a month. Both are insured against theft but not full coverage. Funny story, to be honest, I called the insurance company to insure my MT-07 and he automatically expected me to go for full coverage, talking about how they do that for every brand new car or motorcycle. But when he said it was gonna cost €200 a month to insure, I was like, whoa, slow down. I'll be fine with just the theft coverage, thank you. I've been riding for 3.5 years and I'll just take it easy, or I'll take the risks. If anything happens, that's on me, but for that money I'd rather just buy some crash protection or just save the money. We're talking about €2,400 a year, and that's a lot for a full-time student. Anyways, I pay €80 of insurance for both bikes, and you might be thinking, wait, shouldn't it be €90? And you're right, but the insurance company gives a little discount because I own 2 bikes and I insure them both with them. Now my monthly fuel cost. Well, the MT125 was really cheap, usually about €20 to €30 a month, and I rode it pretty much every day, and I still do. I do live in Amsterdam though, so I'm not covering that much distance, but still, even on the highway it's really fuel efficient. For the MT-07 I pay probably €50 a month, but I have 2 bikes, so I'm not riding them both at the same time, so we don't need to double the cost up. It's just like €30, €40 a month. Maintenance, on the other hand, was a different story. I spent around €1,000 in my first year riding the MT125, and I probably spent another €1,000 in my next 2 years. Some expected but some unexpected problems. My dashboard of the MT125 broke down. I wrecked the rear axle by doing maintenance. My sprocket and chain needed to be replaced unexpectedly, and there was something else. Oh yeah, I had broken wires, they were burnt or something. I never modified my bike, so at least I didn't spend any extra on that, but thankfully in the end motorcycles don't really lose their value, especially when you buy used. So when I'm gonna sell my MT125, I'm gonna get most of my money back. The maintenance cost I wasn't too happy about, and that's also one of the reasons I went for a new bike this time. Just a lot of maintenance free kilometers you have. But one of the biggest reasons I was able to afford all of this is because I still live at home. That decision alone saved me thousands of euros, and it gave me the time and space to actually work towards my goals. But I don't live here for free. I pay my parents €350 a month for food and rent, and I know it's not that much, but it still helps them out and it keeps me disciplined with my finances. And honestly, you pay with your mental health more than anything. Still, I don't really plan to move out either. It's not that I don't want to, but living in Amsterdam is ridiculously expensive, and to be honest, even if my family pisses me off sometimes, I do enjoy being around them, and if I would move out, I think it'd be really lonely. I'd miss the fun, the fights and everything in between. Trust me guys, I know an MT-125 and an MT-07, having both bikes isn't really that crazy, but you need to understand I'm a student, so it is a pretty decent achievement for me personally. But yeah, like I said, as a student having two bikes, it's really been an experience. I really like having two bikes, and I didn't expect it to be that fun to be able to switch. You might ask then, why are you getting rid of this bike? Well, I have bigger plans. I don't really have a use case for the MT-125, and the next year I'm gonna be looking for a new bike. I want to go look for something crazy like the R9 or the R1, BMW S1000 RR, you know, something completely insane, and then have the MT-07 as the daily bike and the R1, R9 or some super crazy super sport bike as the bike that's gonna go in the garage. And hopefully YouTube is gonna help me a little bit with financing all of that, because it's quite expensive what I'm trying to do. But you know what they say, where there's a will there is a way. But at the end of the day, it's not luck, it's planning, discipline. And I know people who really want a bike, but they don't actually take any action towards that goal, and I don't really believe you want it as much as I do. If you want to afford a dream car or a dream bike, it's simple: work hard, save a lot, and if you can, live with your parents, and that's really all there is to it, given you live in a decently developed country. I know I'm still very blessed to be in this situation, so don't get me wrong. Hopefully this inspires just one person to follow their dreams. It doesn't even have to be motorcycles specifically, just something you're willing to set your mind to. Okay, I can talk for a lot more, but I think this video is long enough. The Yachiri who is editing this video probably hates me, so if you want to join the journey, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I've got some videos in the description that are interesting, like my first ride home from the dealership and how much it costs to own a motorcycle. It's kind of related to what I talked about in this video. So anyways, I will see you guys in the next one.